My wife cheated on me and got pregnant. My wife and I met in 2008 when we were both traveling. We met in Madrid, and it was a very stereotypical meet cute. Our eyes met from across the bar, and I approached her. We ended up going home together that night. We spent the next 3 days having sex and drinking and soaking up the sun, and decided to keep in touch. She went home, and I finished my travels, and we began a year-long LDR before I moved to be with her. Over the course of the LDR, she divulged to me that she had cheated on a previous boyfriend and felt bad about it, but felt his choice to dump her was over the top, and that cheating wasn't always a silver bullet, especially since it was only a kiss. I realize now that she was sizing up my reaction and almost certainly cheating. This I can actually forgive and let go because duck LDRs, and it's in the distant past, but not what happened last week. I told her at the time it was a deal breaker, and if I caught her so much as flirting with another man, I would dump her. There are two absolute no-nos in a relationship: no violence and no cheating. A year after I moved, we got married, and a year later again she fell pregnant. I was overjoyed. She seemed distant and sad and anxious the first 2 months after finding out, and eventually, after I poked and prodded, she broke down and told me she had a one-night stand around the time of conception and the kid might not be mine. I was on a plane back home 2 days later and didn't speak to her for a month. I ignored all her messages and calls, but eventually I caved and we talked. She said she was going to get an in utero paternity test, and if the baby wasn't mine, she would terminate, but that she wanted me to come back first. I went back and she got the test. I was in the room when she got the results. Not mine. I told her she was scheduling the appointment that day, or I was going to a divorce lawyer as soon as I left the hospital. She scheduled the appointment for a week later. The day of the appointment I drove her and held her hand, as in termination, under any circumstances, is a traumatic event for a woman. In the car she broke down in tears and begged me to wait, change my mind, try to make it work, anything but go through with it, and I looked her dead in the eye and told her, "Do whatever you want, it's your body and your life, but I will not raise another man's child. That child will be the living embodiment of your betrayal, and a daily reminder of what you did. I will not subject myself to that." Termination or divorce? Edit for detail. I wanted a divorce. As soon as she hesitated, I jumped right to divorce. I never tired to talk her into it. I advised against the *ort ion. She didn't want to keep the kid and lose the marriage, she wanted both. She told me directly that she would terminate if I left her regardless. She even told me before I flew back that even if the baby was mine and I divorced her, she would be getting in termination. She wanted specifically to keep the child and have me raise it with her, and unless I stayed, she was getting the *ort ion no matter what. That was not happening. She asked me if she had it, if I would give her another chance. I said yes. I loved my wife. Ducking sue me. I am not sorry, I refused to play daddy to her infidelity spawn. She got the termination. There were complications and she was on bed rest for a month. For a while after, she was short with me. Unaffectionate and cold. We lost the spark. I tried, she didn't. She told me one night after a few drinks that she resented me for making her choose. I told her I was glad she got the *ort ion as she deserved to suffer for what she'd done. I regretted saying this out loud immediately, even though that is exactly how I felt and still feel. One day I came home early from work and found her crying on the couch with a man next to her holding her. A man I'd met many times before. A man she worked with. The look on their faces told me everything I needed to know. He was the father. It wasn't a one-night stand. After I dragged him out of the house by his neck, she admitted they'd had a 3-month affair. I will never know if this is the extent of the truth. To this day I accept that and have stopped asking. I began divorce proceedings and immediately kicked her out of the house. She begged and cried and pleaded for months, and again, stupidly, I broke and took her back. I told her she had to quit her job and cut contact. She agreed and made the call there and then. We moved away from her city and bought a house in mine in the other end of the country. We went to marriage counseling and got better. Slowly but surely we went from strength to strength. We now both had total transparency on all accounts and accepted that's the way it was. As time went on, I stopped looking on her phone. Things were great between us. Our bed life was great, we're both travel junkies and went on lots of trips, and started talking about having kids. We tried for 2 years to conceive a child, and it hadn't happened yet, but the practice was a lot of fun, so what the hell. This was the case for years. I was completely unguarded, and my defenses were down when the most recent event happened. She had gotten slightly distant for a couple of months, but not so much that I was worried. I asked her about it, and she always made a point of being affectionate when I did and assuring me it was all good, but her default, when not being prompted, was to be quiet and seek out her own space. She was out drinking with her friends one night, and I stayed at home. I woke up at 4 a.m. and heard her voice downstairs. I went out and asked if that was her, no answer, she didn't hear me. I guessed pretty quickly that she was on the phone, and due to the time it was, her recent withdrawal, and her dubious relationship with loyalty, I decided to listen in. She was laughing and flirting, and saying crap like "I miss you too" and "I love you too." I knew it was him, I was certain of it. Then she started talking about the hotel, how good the room service was, and when she could see him again, and I had heard enough. I charged down the stairs like a bull, and she knew she had been caught. She started yelling and screaming and cursing me, shouting that she'd been to a doctor here, and she'd told her during the termination there was some sort of problem. She was drunk and slurring her words and crying, but somewhere in the minutiae of words like tear and scar tissue and permanent, I got it out of her that her uterus had been damaged, and it was unlikely she could ever bring a baby to term. She'd found this out 3 months prior, right around when she started getting distant again. I grabbed the phone out of her hand. She tried to take it back. We clawed back and forth until I shoved her back on the couch and told her not to get back up until I told her to. I sat on the chair opposite her and went through every detail. A half-dozen text messages from him asking when she was going to be leaving the bar, and that he missed her voice, and how much fun they'd had. Obviously all the other messages had been deleted, but she hadn't had a chance to delete the ones from that night yet. I read the messages aloud and she stared at me with daggers in her eyes. I asked her over and over to explain herself, and eventually she jumped up and started screaming again. She screamed that she'd taken a day off work and dove to meet him halfway, and they ducked in a hotel all day. She screamed that when she got the news from the doctor, she saw me as an enemy, and he was her ally. She screamed at me that she wasn't sorry, and that I'd ruined her life. I yelled back that I was glad she got the ord ion, and if I could destroy him, and take that away from her too, I would. She clapped me across the face. And I clapped her back. Tough. It was open-handed, but proportionately much harder than she clapped me. She fell back onto the couch, and looked at me stunned and in disbelief as she held her face and began to sob. She reached for her phone and I snatched it away from her, before throwing it and smashing it against the wall. I went up to my room and paced back and forth, and she sat downstairs crying, and that's where we stayed until morning. When I went downstairs she was asleep. I woke her up and told her to get a shower and get out. That I'd already made an appointment with my lawyer to file for divorce, and she wasn't staying in the house while I was gone. She sobbed and begged me not to go through with it. She said she was drunk and didn't mean it. Said she only made up the story about meeting him to hurt me, and that I was her one and only and blah blah blah. She said she was sorry she hit me and didn't want an apology for me clapping her back, that she deserved it. I agreed she deserved it and told her it was good she wasn't waiting for an apology, because she would be getting one. That was last week. This week she's back living with her parents. She calls me every day. 10 times a day. She sends lengthy, weepy text messages that I don't read or reply to, as my lawyer says I shouldn't contact her unless through him. I'm going forward with the divorce. FML. Edit, an important note I left out, that I have answered on numerous comments, and it wasn't until someone pointed out I should have mentioned it in the OP. She stated she had no interest in raising the baby alone. If I divorced her, she was going through with it. She didn't want to keep the baby, and I made her get rid of it. She wanted us both to keep it, and be the father to the child of the man she cheated with. At this point, I still believe the pregnancy was due to a one-night stand. She had a weekend away with the girls. She was not on a weekend with the girls. My wife cheated on me and gave me a hall pass to cheat on her. I used it and met an awesome woman. My wife, 40F, had an affair and then encouraged me, 40M, to sleep with someone as a way of trying to make up. My marriage is doing much better, but I've developed feelings for my new partner, 32F, and have been thinking about leaving my wife. I have been married to my wife for 12 years, but together 14 in total. We had a good marriage, even great at times, before her affair. I won't say our marriage was perfect, because it wasn't, but in looking back I don't see anything I did which justified her affair. I do admit that sometimes I spent too much time at work or on our kids and not enough on her, which I think is common among most married couples at some point, but I was not a bad husband by any means. In October of 2018, she started an affair with her coworker. She had been having an emotional affair with him for longer, but this is when it became physical. Their affair lasted until May 2019. That is when she broke it off. She then confessed everything to me in July 2019. She says that she always felt what she was doing was wrong but justified it to herself by telling herself that I didn't care about our marriage anymore. When I asked her to go to counseling with me after I began to feel she was pulling away, and we weren't connecting anymore, April 2019, and she saw that I really did care still, she began to feel guilty, and eventually broke things off. She admits that she initially wasn't planning to tell me about the affair, but she felt guilty over this too, and got to the point in July where she felt like she was going to have a breakdown and she didn't confess. Things were bad after I found out about the affair. I didn't move out for the sake of our kids, but I wanted to be away from her. We barely talked unless it involved the kids. There was no affection. I didn't want to divorce her, but I didn't see how I could get past the cheating. She kept apologizing and telling me she would do anything to fix our marriage and floated the idea of me sleeping with someone else if it would help. Eventually I realized that I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I either had to divorce her or work on our marriage. I decided to at least give our marriage a shot to see if anything could be salvaged, mostly because she chose to come clean, and I felt like that was a sign she was truly remorseful even though she had planned to keep the affair from me at first. We were able to start counseling in October 2019, but I didn't feel like it was working and told her I felt like I was wasting my time. She begged me to keep going to counseling and again encouraged me to sleep with someone if it would make me feel better. I thought about it more this time than when she first mentioned it, and the more I thought about it the more I felt like I would not be able to get past this until I slept with someone too. In hindsight, I don't think that was a healthy attitude, but that was how I felt. I decided around January of this year that I would accept her offer of a pass. When I told my wife her only condition was that I keep going to counseling. I met my partner in February. She's pretty incredible. I was only expecting to have a fling with her, but it has become a lot more. I feel we are compatible in ways my wife and I never were. She knows about my situation and has been very understanding. She admitted to me recently that she wants more. She doesn't just want to be my ex-partner. She wants us to be a couple. Part of me feels the same way. I can't deny that I have wondered what life would be like with her. I think we could be very happy together in ways I may no longer be able to be happy with my wife. The idea of a fresh start is very appealing. On the other hand, I don't know if I am thinking clearly about this. I feel like I may be falling into the trap of thinking the grass is greener. We've only known each other for a short period of time. My wife has also been working really hard to save our marriage, and I can say that we are in a much better place. For the first time since I learned about the affair, I think that our marriage is salvageable, and I can see a future for us together. I doubt I can ever fully get over the affair, but I think we can be happy again. That is my dilemma. It's better for my kids if I chose their mom. They may even hate me if I leave her for my partner, and they find out how our relationship started. My relationship with my kids is my top priority. On the other hand, I wonder what kind of relationship I can have with my wife. I forgive her, but I don't know how I won't always have trust issues. It's a lot of baggage to live with for the rest of my life, and I'm not sure that is something I want. Of course, there's no guarantee the new relationship would work, so I could be leaving my marriage for nothing. I'm not sure what to do. We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Comment 1. The marriage is over. It's time to move on for your own happiness. Original posters reply. I don't want it to be over, but I am not optimistic about what kind of relationship we can have in the future. My fear is that I could be ending a potential relationship which could make me happy only to break up with my wife in a few more years. Or she could even cheat again. There are a lot of potential bad outcomes. Comment 2. I would sit down and talk to 32F and see what she wants out of a potential relationship with you. If she wants one kid and doesn't mind being a stepmom, and you refine with it, then maybe give that relationship a chance at least. BC, this one seems pretty dead to me, not gonna lie. Don't keep your marriage together. BC of the kids, those marriages never last or become better. BC the only reason one of the partners in that relationship is still with the other one is BC they want to raise their kids and nothing else. But maybe your marriage is still salvageable, what do I know? It's up to you, but remember she only told you BC she was having a mental breakdown due to all the guilty she didn't really want to tell you. And all good relationships need trust, not trust issues. Original posters reply. That might be the best first step. I think I need to understand more about what she really wants from a relationship. I would consider one kid. I don't think I could commit to more than that because at this point, if we had a kid in the next 2 years, which seems optimistic, then I'd be 60 when they graduate. Every additional kid adds another 2+ years, so there are a lot of concerns about how healthy I would be and how able I would be to support them as they become young adults. Comment 3. Your wife chose to destroy the sanctity of your marriage. You will always have that resent in the back of your mind. You deserve to be happy and your wife doesn't deserve you. I'd say take your shot at happiness. Original posters reply. I do think I deserve to be happy, but I think my wife deserves that too. If she felt the need to cheat, then clearly she wasn't. It may be best for us to move on and find partners that can make us happy if we can't do that for each other anymore. Comment 4. Ask yourself this: if things with your kids would remain the same, who would you choose? Who makes you happiest? Who seems better equipped to live a full life with you into the future? Kids know when you're miserable. I knew my parents were only staying married for us, and honestly it hurts me still to this day. It makes me feel guilty for keeping them in an unhappy situation so long. Hell, it even led to me blaming myself for their unhappiness to begin with. Now ask yourself, do you want our kids feeling all that when they grow up? Be honest with them. They'll understand in time. Original posters reply. I still think my wife makes me happiest outside of sex because she knows me best, but I have a lot more in common with the partner because we have more similar interests. This could change in a year or two. The future question is hard to answer. My partner is younger, so there are a lot of things we could experience together. I think the next 10 years with her would be a lot different from the next 10 with my wife. It would be more like the first 10 with my wife, and those years were fun. However, I am not sure if fun is what I want. I will be 50 in 10 years. I'm not old, but I enjoy the part of my life where I am. I am not sure if I want to be traveling around the world and off exploring. I would lean towards the partner if my kids didn't care and weren't affected.